Hi there, everybody. Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton from the home office as we're social distancing, trying to stay safe and stay healthy. Welcome to a Facebook Live Q&A. It's all about the kids. That's what I'm here for. Look, kids are cooped up and they're either homeschooling, e-learning, or maybe they haven't started it yet or they're kind of easing into it. So hopefully from now until about 1:30, this is an opportunity for you to ask some questions and let me know what you're thinking that you'd like to learn about weather. We'll give it a couple minutes or a minute or so here to let people kind of hop on and ask some questions. But what I'd like is if the kids could, in the comments section, send me your name and your age and your weather question. I'll give you a shout out and we'll talk a little bit about weather and we'll learn. We'll learn a lot, maybe laugh a little too. Let's try this. Don't see any comments yet. I'm hoping it's at least turned on. There we go. Good. I just want to make sure the comments are turned on so I can see stuff. This is from Laura Roseller. I'm going to butcher some names today. My apologies. But her son Jack is there, and he's 8 and a second grader at Mosaic in Melville. I think I visited there. Hey there. So yeah, give me age, name, and a question, and I'll give you a shout out. Let me kind of let some people join us here. Give it another minute or so before we start really digging in. But I'll let you know that I've got a little bit of a new setup here. So I'm on this iPhone, and then let's see. It doesn't look like it's letting me switch. Well, that is unfortunate. That is really unfortunate. It's not letting me switch the view to a different, there it is. Boom, how you like me now? Okay, so I've got this big monitor set up, hooked up to my laptop. And what I'll do is I'll just kind of switch back and forth. Hi to Ashlyn, who's 9, Logan, who's 6. Gia is 9, wants to know about ice. We'll talk about that. Ice and water is kind of interesting in our atmosphere. It can exist as both a liquid, a solid, as a vapor, all in natural conditions, which makes it interesting. So I've got some videos, I've got some pictures, and we'll have some fun. So I think we got over 140 people in here. We kind of just started it. Let me start off with this. Again, anyone who just joined us, would love to hear your name, age, and weather questions. I am the Chief Meteorologist over at Channel 4, so I do weather on Channel 4. Obviously, I'm doing it from home as we social distance, and I hope that you are staying safe and trying to have some fun, giving your parents maybe a little break like this half hour, hopefully. Mike from Hillsborough just joined us. Gavin is 9, Micah is 5, Gia is 4, all in O'Fallon, Illinois, from Laverna Evans Elementary and Unity Lutheran Elementary. Cool. So meteorology is a science. And so I went to college and went to Purdue University and studied a lot of math and science. I just want to say this because sometimes math can be scary. Even my 8-year-old is telling me, high school sounds tough because algebra is hard. I'm like, well, algebra, try calculus, try differential equations. But I didn't say that. What I did tell him is everything's hard until you finally do it. I actually had a calculus teacher tell us that. He said, hey, at the beginning of this, you're going to look at this and be like, this is crazy. I don't know what to do. But as you take the course, you study hard, you put the time into it, you figure it out. And it's kind of like when you're at the bottom of a hill and you look up, the hill looks taller than say you're on the top of the hill and you look down and you think, I did it. So push through. If you want to be a scientist, you can be like me. I'm nothing special. I just worked hard and I love weather. And if you love weather, if you love science, work hard at it. You can do this too. So let's talk. Let's see. We've got Aiden, age 6. How fast can a tornado spin? Aiden, great question because tornadoes have 2 different movements to them. And I have a bunch of pictures and videos here. So I'm going to kind of go to some of them and show you a video to help explain some stuff. Let's see. This one is from Science Out There on YouTube. And you'll see these are storm chasers, and they go chase down this storm that eventually produced a tornado. No one was hurt. But Aiden, there's actually kind of 2 movements here. Satellite tornado there too, twin tornadoes. But so there's the tornado there, and it's spinning. And the fastest spin that we know of is about 301 miles per hour. And that was measured by a Doppler on wheels radar called a DOW. They could be faster, by the way. And again, this is from Science Out There on YouTube. But there's another movement. The actual tornado moves. And so that forward movement is about on average 30 miles per hour. Look, sometimes tornadoes can move forward at like 10 miles per hour. Sometimes they move forward at like 60, 70 miles per hour. Those are even more dangerous because they come up on you quicker. But the stuff that does damage is the twisting rotation. That's the faster movement. That does most of the damage. But that is a great question. All right, that was Aiden, age 6. How about Reba, age 9? How does a severe thunderstorm start? So this is a great question because you can learn the 2 basic principles of a thunderstorm. And I'm going to go back to my graphics. I'm going to fly through some pictures that are going to look cool. We can get to them later based on your questions. But I want to start here. What you see there, that's not a tornado. That's air coming down. And so that's rain. And because it's so white, probably hail. So it's probably a rain and hail shaft. There's something over here, though, that you don't see that is super, super, super important. It's the updraft. It's air going up. That is the basics of a thunderstorm. And sometimes you see it in the summertime, especially because in the summertime, instead of a big gray cloud all over the sky, it's like blue skies, and then you can see one towering white cloud just billowing up. So that billowing up is an updraft. So that's the first basic principle in getting a thunderstorm, let alone a severe thunderstorm. And then what goes up must come down, and that's the downdraft. This is the part that most of us notice, the whoosh of air that comes out of it. Have you ever noticed it's like 90 degrees out, you get hit by a thunderstorm, all of a sudden it's 70? That's the cool air being dragged down from aloft, and then it rushes out. And you can get hit by it even if you're not getting hit by the rain yet. You can feel that cool downdraft air. That's the rain, that's the hail. That's what most people notice. Well, it turns out in updraft, if it can be really, really strong, it can hoist hail and even water in the air. And then eventually it comes whooshing down really strong and creates a real strong wind gust. And that wind gust can create severe thunderstorm. That severe thunderstorm can be winds at 58 miles per hour or greater. That's kind of our definition for severe thunderstorm, because in general, it's about 58 miles per hour or greater that most damage occurs. Or hail the size of quarters. And then the other thing that can be a severe thunderstorm is obviously a tornado. But tornadoes are different. They don't form in that downdraft. Nope. Tornadoes form in the updraft. So here's a picture of a tornado. This would be air coming in and spinning up. And it's that suction near the ground and that twisting that creates damage as air goes up. This is actually part of the updraft. What goes up must come down. What you don't see on the other part of this image is there's probably a downdraft down around here, and there's rain and maybe some hail coming out of it. So you can have 2 parts of a severe thunderstorm that has a tornado. One, the tornado, and then over here you can have the hail and the strong winds. Great question there. All right. Thanks all for joining us. I see we've kind of doubled our numbers, so I just want to reiterate, love to hear name, age, and a question. Jackson, age 7, wants to know, how long do you have to evacuate from a hurricane? Each situation is different, and I'm not real familiar with the specifics, but in my head, because I've been to a lot of seminars and stuff where we talk a lot about weather in general and hurricanes, I want to say like FEMA and most state officials want to give you 48 hours, and that's because tornadoes are so different than hurricanes. Tornadoes that we were just talking about, they affect a small area. When a tornado hits a town, it doesn't hit the whole town. It doesn't hit all of O'Fallon, Illinois. It would hit a small portion of it. But you can't really predict it. You can predict the ingredients that lead to it, but you don't know exactly when it's going to come. So tornadoes can kind of happen with very little warning. They happen with warning, but very little warning. Maybe you kind of know something's going to happen, and then all of a sudden I'm on the air saying in 10 minutes it's going to be at your house. And 10 minutes is little warning. It's warning, but it's a little warning. Hurricanes, we see them from space. So let me get to a picture of that. And they're huge, so we know they're coming. This is going to be a picture of Hurricane Katrina from space. The red lines is the state borders. So when you talk about a hurricane, you're talking about states. That's Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, Florida right here. So you're talking about a huge area that's really the size of a state. And so when you're trying to evacuate, you got to give people a lot of time. And sometimes what they'll do is they make it so that the interstates that usually go opposite directions, they say only go this way, out of town, so that more people can get on the roads and get out of town. And hurricanes, because we can see them coming, we're pretty good at forecasting them. And I say we, it's really brilliant scientists behind the scenes, like at the National Hurricane Center, and the people who create the forecast models, and the hurricane hunters who fly into these storms to tell us what's happening. But we do pretty good. I believe Landfall location, the accuracy is about 50 miles, and I believe what we're kind of struggling with is intensity of a hurricane. Forecasting that at landfall specifically can be a bit of a challenge, but you see it coming, and evacuation is important. All right, Zach, age 9. Does the updraft make the height and diameter of a tornado predictable? Wow, great question. We have some future scientists on here. Great question. I love that. So Zach, age 9, wants to know if the updraft makes the height and the diameter, so the size of a tornado, predictable. The problem is you don't know how strong the updraft is in a tornado, and that's one of the problems with tornadoes. We need Zach to grow up and become a PhD meteorologist and help us learn more. Because we know some of the ingredients that go into a tornado, but they're hard to measure. You can't walk up to a tornado with an anemometer. An anemometer is a tool that measures wind speed and measure the incoming updraft wind speed, or even measure the vertical lift of that updraft. But what I can tell you, Zach, is sometimes you see a big tornado and you think, oh, that must be really bad. Not always. The size of the tornado does not necessarily determine the strength of the winds on the ground that are doing damage. So the size of the tornado, and look, oftentimes the big bad ones are pretty big, but you can have really intense in a very small area type of tornado as well. So if we could measure that updraft speed, maybe we could correlate the strength of the tornado. So that would be cool, and maybe that will be your PhD research. I'd appreciate it. Olivia, age 9, can 2 hurricanes happen at the same time? They absolutely, I mean, across the globe, they can happen at the same time, Olivia, but I think what you kind of mean is like next to each other, probably. Sometimes when hurricanes get close to each other, they'll kind of diminish each other. They take fuel away from each other, and they'll actually kind of ruin the strength of one, and another one that's kind of the dominant one will absorb the other one. They tend to rotate around each other. It doesn't happen very often. There's a term called the Fujiwara effect. Hey, in science we like big fancy words that make us sound smart. But it's when these like 2 cyclones will kind of dance around each other, and sometimes they'll kind of merge into one larger one. But that's not very often. Usually hurricanes are just so big, they're like almost like their own weather system. And in fact, in order to get a hurricane, one of the things you need to do is leave it alone. Hurricanes don't like big jet streams coming through or cold fronts coming through. That tends to tear apart the system that is the engine that is driving a hurricane. Let's see. Thanks for talking to us about clouds. This is from Susan Marie Polson. How many different types are there, from a teacher? Great question. And I don't know the actual number because we classify clouds in part by the way they look, in part by how widespread they are, in part by their height. So cirrus clouds are the highest clouds, and they're called glaciated. Again, fancy words, and I'll make it simple. Glaciated means they're made of ice. So they're up so high in the atmosphere where it's really cold that they're made of ice. So those cirrus clouds are wispy and thin. Sometimes you'll have cirrostratus. Stratus means a blanket, like a layer. So cirrostratus is like a milky white sky. Cumulus clouds are those puffy clouds, and then cumulonimbus. Nimbus is a word that means rain. So cumulonimbus is a thunderstorm. It's a big puffy cloud that's producing rain. But there's all sorts of different types. There's shelf clouds, there's funnel clouds. Let me show you a funnel cloud too, because this is a basic concept that you should know. And I'll show you a picture here. This was over the South County Mall. This is actually a wall cloud right here, not a funnel. And that is a lowering of air. Remember we talked about the updraft? That's air going up. What you can't see where there's no cloud right here, there's air going up. And it's rushing up, and this is the level where the air is going up so fast, it's cooling the air and making the water turn into clouds. That's what a cloud is. It's made of little water droplets, or if it's high enough, water and ice particles. And so that's a wall cloud, and that's a visual instance where I want to watch for possible tornado. Same cloud produced this. Now that's a funnel cloud, and that's reaching down towards the South County Mall and never produced a tornado. I mean, that thing must have been 200 feet off the ground. And that, thank gosh, I remember that day I was on the air, and later I got that picture. But, you know, that's one of the things is sometimes that is over your house, and you go to the basement, and you come up, and you go, there was no tornado. If that's over my house, I want to be in the basement. And the way I think about it is like buckling up. You get into a car, you buckle up for safety just in case. You don't know you're going to be in an accident, but you do it just for safety. If that's over my house and I have a radar-indicated tornado warning, I want to be in the basement or in my safe place just to be safe. Not knowing that, hey, there may not be a tornado touchdown, I may not have damage, but it is the right thing to do. And you got to think that every single time. So even if you go to the basement 5 times and you come up and there's no tornado, it's okay, you did the right thing. Because on that 6th time you go to the basement, that could be where the tornado does touch down and do damage. How do you know if a tornado is coming? That's from Connor, who's age 9. Great question. Well, it starts with knowing the ingredients that can create a tornado. Again, you're going to see a lot of pictures here, some of them of damage, and I'm going to get to radar because that's really our tool for helping to determine if there's a tornado. This is a hook echo, and that's on radar. See this little hook right here? It hooks down. So the tornado would be right about there. Now, this is a classic signature. They're not always so easy to spot. It's showing strong rotation. Now, not all hook echoes produce a tornado. So if you look at radar and you see something close to that, or you see something you think is a hook, not necessarily producing a tornado. They can rotate and not necessarily be strong enough to produce a tornado. So we use some other tools. This also is radar. This is actually from the Good Friday tornado. And that is Bridgeton right there. That would be where the tornado is. This helps us determine winds. And this is really the key. This is the Doppler in Doppler radar in a way. The Doppler effect is manifested best here. It's such a great tool. But where there's red, that is wind that's going away from the radar. And I just happen to know the radar's right here. So wind is going this way. The green is wind going towards the radar. So if wind's going this way at, let's say, 70 miles an hour and wind's going this way at 100 miles an hour, that's radar helping to give us an idea that, no, in the atmosphere that close, winds don't go that fast like this, like on a super highway. They just don't do that. What's happening is they're rotating. So the radar's picking up a droplet going this way, then as it rotates, the droplet going this way, then the droplet going this way. And so that same droplet of water in the air, it's going to be visible as green on the radar, and then all of a sudden red on the radar, and then green and then red. And if it's going real fast, it'll light up. That helps us pinpoint, along with some other tools, but that really helps pinpoint where there's rotation aloft. Now, how do you know a tornado's coming? We really don't, because you know what? Radar can't see the ground. So if I go, see this picture? That's actually our radar in Weldon Spring. And it's seeing this because the radar beam sends out energy and it has to bounce off of the cloud droplets. Well, there's all sorts of businesses and schools and power lines in the way near the ground, so it can't go near the ground. So what it does is it goes up in the air. So the rotation radar sees is here. In this case, look, tornado, perfect, just save lives. The radar does not know the difference between that storm and this storm. There's no tornado. This darkness is rain. So here's the updraft. What goes up must come down. Here's the downdraft. If there's a tornado, it's in the updraft, nothing. But there's rotation. And that is exactly why sometimes you get a tornado warning. We call them Doppler indicated tornado warning, where it doesn't actually produce a tornado on the ground. But there is a nasty storm spinning above you, and it might. And that's why you should head to the basement every time, knowing full well, and we need to be transparent and honest with you, hey, may not get a tornado out of this, but you got to do the right thing. Just like buckling up. You don't know if you're going to be in an accident, but it's the right thing to do. Luke, who's 10, wants to know, how often do tornadoes strike? We get, I'm doing this off memory here, I think it's about 1,000 tornadoes in the United States a year. The United States is the tornado capital of the entire globe, the entire world. And the 1,000 tornadoes is spread out across this huge country. So we don't get them all, obviously. And, you know, you've heard of Tornado Alley, which kind of includes part of Missouri. There's no official definition of Tornado Alley. There's a Southern Alley, too, Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia, parts of Tennessee. But bottom line is, you can have a year where you only get 2 tornadoes in your area and they never hit your town. And then sometimes you can get just one storm that produces 15 tornadoes in your area. So it varies, but the United States is definitely the tornado capital of the world. Lily, who's age 8, do tornadoes come during certain seasons? So I don't want you to think of a tornado season per se, because tornadoes can happen any time of the year. And we in St. Louis know that. Why? We had one on New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve tornado in 2010, I believe it was. And that was an EF3. 0 is the weakest damage, 5 is the strongest damage. So it was a 3. So it was a pretty significant tornado. And you can have it any day, even in December, even in January. it has to be warm out. You have to warm up. And that day, I think the high was it's in the 50s or 60s. It might have been like 64 or 54. So it has to be unusually warm if it's going to happen in the wintertime or the springtime. So we don't get them as often in the winter and the early part of spring. But when they do happen, they actually tend to be stronger. So this is the time of the year where you really want to be aware. Make sure you have a weather radio. Make sure you have multiple ways to get the warning, like maybe on your parents' app. And then just have a plan. I don't want anyone to be scared by tornadoes. I want you prepared. Don't be scared, be prepared. And there's 3 things you need. 1, a way to get the warning. You don't know to take shelter unless you know something's happening, right? Weather radio is great. Any kind of app, have multiple apps. And then 2, have a plan. Know where you need to go. And then 3, just have a safety kit there, just in case. So don't be scared, be prepared. And so if you have to pin down when you have the most tornadoes, about May, late April, May, and early June would probably be the most for St. Louis. And in other areas, it might be different. But I don't want you to think of that as tornado season because we get them in November. We get them on New Year's Eve. All right. Let's see here. Hannah, age 10, how long does a tornado last? It varies. And tornadoes can be on the ground for like a split second. And then sometimes they can be on the ground for miles. Sometimes even hundreds of miles. The tri-state tornado in 1929, I think it was March 1929, hit Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana. And, you know, in 1929, we didn't have the best records, but we think that was on the ground most of that way. And I want to say that's like 200 some miles. So it can be on the ground for an hour. It can be on the ground for literally 1 to 2 seconds. Those 1 to 2 seconds rarely do much damage because it's not on the ground that long. Even that term on the ground is interesting because tornadoes are actually on the ground even though you can't see it. Wind is swirling, it's just not strong enough to pick up damage. And something happens that triggers that wind to get stronger. We think it's similar to when ice skaters come out and figure skaters and they put their arms out and they're spinning, and then they bring their arms in and they spin faster. That's a conservation of angular momentum. You're all going to be quizzed on that later. Just kidding, no quiz. But the science tells us that the spin gets faster as you bring mass in towards that spin. So something takes wind that's actually already swirling on the ground that you just can't see, tightens it up to the point where it's really fast, and then it starts sucking stuff up. There's so much we need to learn about tornadoes, and I hope that some of you out there are going to become PhD meteorologists, figure it out, tell me, and then make me look better on TV so I can pinpoint these tornadoes and help people. Let's see. Please give me a shout out. How do hurricanes form? Natala, 11. No problem, Natala. How do hurricanes form? Hurricanes need to be left alone. No jet streams, no cold fronts. And they start off as like a complex of thunderstorms that dance around each other. They do create their own low pressure. And that low pressure turns into a bigger storm, but they need fuel. They need warm water. And I'll go back to some graphics about hurricanes. We're talking vast amounts of ocean water. So this is Hurricane Katrina in the Gulf of Mexico. Vast amounts of ocean water. The Great Lakes wouldn't work. Mississippi River wouldn't work. You need vast amounts of ocean water, and it has to be warm. About 79 to 80 degrees or warmer. So warm water is the fuel. To give you an idea how big these storms are, take this. We'll just copy it and we'll paste it over St. Louis. Look at that. From the eye of the hurricane out. Now, the winds get weaker and weaker and weaker the farther you go out. But still, this is one storm that goes from Chicago to Kansas City, Indianapolis. It's the size of a state. But that would never happen. And the reason why is because hurricanes need warm water as fuel. So as soon as they hit land, boom, they have no fuel. So this would never happen. Now, we do get the remnants or leftovers of a hurricane, but it's kind of like if you've ever been in a car that's run out of gas, and I hope you haven't. Parents need to fill up more if you have. But if you do, the car doesn't just stop. No, it keeps going and slower and slower and slower, and eventually it comes to a stop. Same thing with hurricanes. So if warm water is their fuel, as soon as they hit land, no fuel. It doesn't stop. It keeps going and weaker, and eventually the winds aren't strong enough. It's not called a hurricane, but it can produce a lot of rain, and it can create flash flooding. That can be very dangerous, but it would never be the 150, 180 mile hurricane type winds here in St. Louis because it would lose its fuel once it hits land, and then it would march up here and just be a rainstorm. Murtuza, age 10. Sorry, my face is getting real close up here. I'm old and I gotta read. What is it like in a hurricane and a tornado? Cool question, and I can actually show you a hurricane. I can't show you a tornado. I don't know anyone that's been in it, or a drone that's going into it, but this is a hurricane. This is the eye. See that darkness right there? That's actually water. There is a donut hole in the middle of a hurricane. And so if you're gonna fly into a hurricane, like these hurricane hunters do, you would actually fly through the turbulent part of the storm and into a calm and sunny donut hole in the middle called the eye. We're gonna watch these guys do this. This is from Nick Underwood from NOAA, hurricane hunters flying into Hurricane Florence. And I'm gonna slow down the speed on this because it happens so quickly. Let me make sure I got that. Nope, I didn't. Because it is really beautiful. So they're in the hurricane, not in the eye yet, We're flying through the hurricane. It's really bumpy. Mr. Templeton would be throwing up if I was on this plane because I get airsick. And they would never want me back. Boom, now you're into the eye of the hurricane. How beautiful. I mean, and that's the thing, you gotta measure the fact that people are gonna get hurt and homes and power are gonna get hurt and power's gonna be out, but Mother Nature can put on a beautiful display sometimes, and that is what it looks like to fly into a hurricane, the eye of the hurricane. Watch, in order to get out, you gotta go through the other side. Yikes, and now it's back to the bounciness. And the reason why it was calm, by the way, is because in the eye, air is actually going down, and air that goes down evaporates water. Evaporation is a term that means you take water from a liquid and you turn it into a gas you can't see. So that's why there's a donut hole right in the middle of a hurricane, and as air goes down, it's going down gently. So it's kind of cool because the eye of the hurricane, the wall right here, the white stuff you see right around, that's where the worst winds are. And then the calmest winds are right in the middle. So it's pretty incredible that the strongest winds and the weakest winds are right next to each other. All right, let's see. We've got Mackenzie, 18 from Edwardsville. Future Met at OU next year. Awesome. I love to hear that. How do supercomputers help forecast the weather? We need more of them, Mackenzie. So Mackenzie's going to Oklahoma University. That's the OU she's referring to, which is kind of one of, I mean, there's an argument on what's the best meteorology school. Where is it? Purdue would be one of them right there that I went to. OU is considered one of the best because they're in Oklahoma where they just get a lot of tornadoes and they get a lot of violent tornadoes. And so there's just tremendous amount of attention and study on it. And actually at Oklahoma University, the campus meteorology department is merged with the National Weather Service, so you get all sorts of great experts, but good luck on that. So how do supercomputers help? We need better supercomputers, and I think what you'll find when you're there, Mackenzie, is that the science of numerical weather prediction is probably, and I'm saying this without being a model guy, I'm not a weather model, I don't make the models, I don't know the science, but I'm pretty sure our science of numerical weather prediction is ahead of our ability to crunch those numbers. Our ability to observe the atmosphere. We have so many satellites and satellite data that we want to pump into these models. And if we could have supercomputers that could handle all that data, we would get better forecasts. So supercomputer processing power is extremely important. But these are really, really expensive computers that are managed and run by either universities or the government. So that computer processing power and ability to crunch better numbers is, and right now there's kind of a fight between, a figurative fight between Europe and America with who's got the better forecast model. And we're kind of leapfrogging. I think Europe said, well, we're going to have a better computer, and then America went and got a better computer, and then Europe got a better computer, which is great because all that does, that competition, is it makes things better, and forecasts will get better. But remember, it is predicting the future. All right, Tessa, who's age 11. I'm just going to give out some shout outs here before I go. Corey, 9. How is lightning created? Lightning is a electrical current, a discharge. And you create it sometimes, especially in the wintertime. You'll notice if you're ever walking on carpet with your socks and you reach for like a doorknob and poof, you shock yourself. That static electric shock is actually a form of lightning, mild, obviously. Lightning that happens in the atmosphere, it's about 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's 5 times hotter than the sun. Let's see, Adeline, age 10, wanted to know about blizzards. I'm running out of time. But Gavin, 9, wants to know, does lightning strike from the ground to the sky or from the sky to the ground? Okay, this will be our last thing before I go into my meeting, because I do want to show you. This is so cool. The real answer, Gavin, is both. Lightning goes both up and down. I know you're seeing all sorts of cool pictures. I have more stuff to get to, but watch this. This is not lightning. Those are stepped leaders. They're stepping down to the ground and they're leading the way to create a path. Lightning needs a path to the ground for the big, bright, what we call return stroke to happen, which is what most people typically think of lightning. But lightning's more complicated. It can go up, it can go down. In this case, the stepped leaders, we're seeing them because Tom Warner here captured these at 7,200 images per second. So it's super slow-mo. So the question is, oh man, it got out of it. Let me play that again. So the question is here, which one of these do we think is going to be that path? Boom, there it is. I'll rewind it for you can see that. So when you see these step leaders going down, once they reach the ground, then electrons flow, the current flows down to the ground, but the light that you see is actually a cascade of light that goes up. So the light you see is cascading up while electrons are flowing down. Lightning is a complicated atmospheric process, and it's so cool. I'll tell you what, guys, before I started this, if you missed it, I want everyone to know out there, every little boy, every little girl needs to know you can be a meteorologist. If you like weather, if you like science, don't be scared by that term science, or don't be scared by math. It's something that might seem hard because you've never done it before. You know, climbing a hill or climbing a mountain is hard when you're at the bottom. When you're at the top, you say to yourself, hey, I can do this. If that's really what you want to do, I want you to do it. Become a scientist, become a meteorologist, because I tell you, doing something you love and then getting paid for it, it's pretty cool. And speaking of that, I do have to get to doing it. I have a news meeting, a conference call actually, since I'm working from home, that I have to jump in on. Thank you all for being here, and this was fun. I want to do it again, so I'll let you know on News 4 when we'll do this again and get to more of your questions. Big thanks and big shout out to all the kids out there. Be easy on your parents, okay, guys? They're going through a lot right now as they try to adjust to kind of a different way of doing things, a different way of teaching you, a different way of having you around all day. But we love you very much, and we hope you all have a great day. Thanks for joining me.